Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, I'm Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Today we are reacting to the verdict and sentencing of Alec Murdaugh. If I'm saying sentencing, you already know what the verdict is. But we're going to react to it anyway because I want to give you kind of a bird's eye view from a practitioner's standpoint of what it's like to be in that room. But before we do that, this is brought to you by eSign.com. eSign.com is a really effective way to remotely do business. Let's just say you can't get to the office and you're on a business trip or whatever, and you need to get some business done, but you can't meet up with the client in order to get the thing done. Well, what do? Email whatever agreement or power of attorney, whatever you need. I do it all the time with retainer agreements, and it's an effective way to do business remotely. You download the app. You get 3 free signatures a month. It's a really effective way to remotely do business. You can sign any kind of agreement from wherever you are. That's why I use it all the time in my practice. Now today, so yesterday we had the verdict, and so we're going to react to that. And let me just tell you, I've been doing this for over 25 years, and being a criminal defense lawyer, that is, and a trial lawyer. I tried over 10 cases last year, or 10 cases last year. And won 7 out of the 10. Now, every single one of them, well, one of them got thrown out because the prosecutor just didn't have the evidence, and I demonstrated that at halftime. But when you're getting that verdict, when that verdict comes back, your heart is pounding, your palm is sweaty, and I guarantee I'll have some of that same reaction watching this. So here's how it works. When you leave for the day and the jury goes to deliberate, you give the clerk your cell phone number. So when all of a sudden you see that number pop up on your screen, that is, it's the clerk, your heart starts pounding. And they'll say one of two things. The jury has a question, or we have a verdict.
I understand that there is a verdict. You may bring the jury.
And at that moment, it takes a while for the jury to come in. So you sit there and you wait, and you wait, and you wait. And this video right here is like 13 minutes long. So you wait, and while you're waiting, your palms are sweaty. You're fidgety. It's the most nerve-wracking thing that you can imagine. And so I remember getting a verdict on a murder case once. And oh my God, I just was like, it's so anxiety provoking. But then you get the not guilty, and that's amazing.
Thank you. Madam Forlady, if you'll stand for me. Have you reached a verdict?
Yes, sir, we have.
Is it unanimous?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right, if you will pass it up.
So now, you hear what the judge said, is it unanimous? A verdict of either guilty or not guilty has to be unanimous. If it's not unanimous, it's a hung jury.
To the clerk who will pass it to me. And you may be seated.
And keep in mind, anytime the jury walks in, you stand up. Anytime the jury walks out, you stand up. They're the judge of the facts, so they're like another judge. So whenever the judge walks in or out, you do the same thing. Now, there are 4 charges, 2 homicide charges and 2 weapon charges.
The defendant will rise. Madam Clerk, you may publish the verdict starting with the back, not with the, let's see, tell you again.
I really do like this judge. I thought he was very fair and even-handed, and his demeanor was very calming. I liked his demeanor.
Starting with the back, flipping them over one by one. State of South Carolina versus
Docket number 2022 GS 15-00592, the State of South Carolina, County of Colleton, in the Court of General Sessions in the term of 2022, July, the State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant, indictment for murder, SC Code 16-3-0010, CDR Code 0116. Guilty verdict. Signed by the forelady, 3/2/23. Docket number 2022-GS-15-00593, the State of South Carolina, County of Colleton, in the Court of General Sessions, the July term of 2022. The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant, indictment for murder, SC Code 16-3-0010, CDR Code 0116, verdict guilty, signed by the forelady, date 3/2/23.
So that's guilty of the two homicide charges.
Docket number 2022-GS-15.
And you know, once you heard one guilty verdict, you know the rest of them are all going to fall in line.
00595, the State of South Carolina, County of Colleton, Court of General Sessions, July term 2022. The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant, indictment for possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. SC Code -16-23-0490, CDR Code 0549, verdict guilty, signed by the foreperson of the jury, date 3/2/23. Docket number 2000.
See how quiet everybody is? And sitting through these for the defendant and for the defense lawyers, it's our choice.
2GS-15-00594. The State of South Carolina, County of Colleton, Court of General Sessions, July term 2022. The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant, indictment for possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. SC Code 16-23-0490, CDR Code 0549, verdict guilty, signed by the foreperson of the jury, 3/2/23.
Not a particularly handsome fella. Very stoic, like he's not surprised by the verdict.
Madam Forelady and members of the jury, if that is the verdict of each and every juror, please let it be known by raising your right hands.
That's called polling the jury, and I do that all the time just to make sure that if there is a guilty verdict, because I do lose cases sometimes, because we can't make a motion for new facts. You have your facts, but when the jury comes back, you can poll the jury, and that is to make sure that it is a unanimous verdict, because every once in a while, somebody might say, that's not my verdict, Judge. They forced me to do this or that. Very, very, very rare that would happen.
All right, thank you. Any individual polling requested? Madam Clerk, you'll need to individually poll the jury according to their jury.
So what he's basically saying is, juror number 1, is that your true and correct verdict? Juror number 2, and they say, yes, it is. So that's what they're doing.
Numbers.
Number 193. Was this your verdict?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Juror 254.
Yes.
Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Juror 326. Was this your verdict?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Juror 530. Was this your verdict?
Yes.
Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror 544.
Yes.
Was this your verdict?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Juror 5.
So he's found guilty of all this stuff. Now what? Now he set for sentencing. Now, typically, when you have a serious crime, there's a room for a pre-sentence investigation. You have impact statements, that kind of thing. They're not doing that in this case, and they're not doing it because it's going to be life without parole. But we'll watch that process, how that goes. But on this verdict, I mean, let's think about what happened during the trial. What really sunk him? Well, one of the main things is that he is the only one that they can put at the scene of the crime, having contact with both Maggie and Paul around the time that they died. Okay? And he indicated to the cops that he wasn't there. Then he gets up on the stand and says, I lied to the cops. You know, the decision to have him testify was his and his alone. I guarantee you his lawyers did not say, oh, you should testify and tell your story. There's no fucking way they did that. There's absolutely no way they did that. Why didn't they do that? Because he can't be believed about anything. He's led such an awful, dishonest in life in the last 10 years. And here's the thing about guys like this. They don't start out like that. But, they dip their fingers into the company till. They start doing a little bit of this, start doing a little bit of that. And pretty soon his whole life becomes an absolute lie.
And two, was this your verdict?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Juror 578, was this your verdict?
Yes.
Is it still your verdict?
Yes.
Juror 589,
So that's the other thing. Generally, the last juror picked is the one that's usually the alternate. But in this case, they had many alternates, and they did because it was such a big trial. Generally, in lengthy trials, you're going to want more alternates. Alternates are jurors that fill in for somebody if somebody else can't fulfill their duty as a juror. For example, in this case, there was a couple. Somebody got sick, I think, one time, and another juror that was alleged to have a little bit of misconduct, or somebody was trying to talk to them, and rather than try to figure it out what that was, the judge booted that person off the jury and brought in an alternate. Alternates, once they're done, if they're still alternates, they don't deliberate. So now let's go to the sentencing phase. So it's sentencing. When you have a case like this is why they didn't do a pre-sentence investigation, because it's going to be a no-brainer. I mean, he's guilty of 2 murder ones, and you're done. If you look at Mr. Murdaugh, he's not in a nice jacket with a white Oxford shirt. Why is that? Because when you're in trial, the jury sees the defendant, and it's unconstitutional to have them in prison garb. So, and he's been in custody this whole time, so he is now in jail clothes because he no longer has the right to or the need to be seen any other way.
Sentencing for the state versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh. Your Honor, I have prepared the sentencing sheets signed up. If I can hand those up to the clerk.
And when you have a sentence like this, the discretion with the court is really, there is no discretion.
Your Honor, very quickly, the defendant has no prior record, and the state has no victim impact people who want to speak at this time. But I will address the court briefly. And I don't.
And on a homicide like this, that's pretty rare that you don't have victim impact. Victim impact is when you have family members, and you've seen this with the Dahmer situation, where they get up and they start speaking, and they get pretty emotional. But there's nobody doing that here because there's nobody left to do it.
Your Honor, to repeat the evidence that Your Honor just heard for the past 6 weeks, but it is overwhelming, and it shows this man to be a cunning manipulator, a man who placed himself above all others, including his family. A man who violated the trust of so many, including his friends, his family, his partners, his profession, but most of all, Maggie and Paul. This is a very complicated situation, and I want to offer my condolences to the family that has suffered here. We have tried very hard to be respectful and sensitive regardless of what position any person took, because this family has suffered and they've had to suffer in the public eye. And I want to offer my condolences to this family. I want to offer it for Maggie and Paul and Mr. Randolph too, who I had the pleasure of working with on one occasion. But the reality remains is that despite all this attention, this case is about Maggie Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh, and I'm so thankful that the jurors gave them a voice. You heard about Paul.
So now, this speech that he's giving is really more political because it's not going to really impact what the judge is going to do in terms of sentencing. But it is for public consumption, and the prosecutor does play a public role in that he represents the people of the state of South Carolina, that he has to express the sentiments that speak to the respect for the law and the need for a stiff sentence.
Obviously, there was the boat case, but you also heard him described as a fun-loving young man, a person who loved life, a person who would do anything for his friends, for anyone. And he's cut down as he was just starting to live his life. You heard about Maggie. You heard how sweet she was. You heard that she was a girl's girl who adapted to the outdoorsman life of her sons, how much she loved her sister.
And as a defense lawyer, you're sitting through this stuff. Oh my God, it's just, you just want to chew your arm off and get away. But it's real life, and these are two people that were killed, and so you have to sit through it.
And her brother-in-law and their children, and she was cut down in the prime of her life. Both of them, like everyone else, was unaware of who he really was. No one who thought they knew this man, no one who thought they were close to this man knew who he really was. And Your Honor, that's chilling. And I've looked in his eyes, and he liked to stare me down as he would walk by me during this trial. And I could see the real Alex Murdaugh when he looked at me. The depravity, the callousness, the selfishness of these crimes are stunning. The lack of remorse and the effortless way in which he...
See that deputy nodding his head, sitting right next to... See, when you have a high profile, anything could happen. You know, somebody could slip him a shank. Somebody could slip him a pill to kill himself. I've seen that happen, not personally, but I've seen it on videos. So...
eyes, including here, sitting right over there in this witness stand. Your Honor, a man like that, a man like this man, should never be allowed to be among free, law-abiding citizens again. And I would submit to you that the only just sentence here to give justice for Maggie and Paul is the maximum, and that would be 2 consecutive life sentences. Thank you, Your Honor.
And this is tough for a defense lawyer. What the hell do you say in something like this? Your Honor, he killed him, but it wasn't that bad. You know, I mean, you know, we disagree with the verdict, Your Honor. We believe that if you're going to sentence him, this is what it should be. But there's really no good way to make a great argument from the defense perspective.
That no victim would like to speak at this time. Would any victim like to speak at any time during these proceedings?
Your Honor, one of the things we did early on, obviously, as I just said, it's a very complicated situation, but we made the decision early on. We've had our victim advocate here who's been doing a wonderful job, regardless of the viewpoints of any individual family member, to provide aid and service to them. We made that decision. I'm informed by our victim advocate that none of them wish to speak. The defense can certainly address that, but that's what I'm informed. But they certainly were offered the opportunity as is required. And I want to commend our victim advocate on the excellent job she did in handling this complex situation that we wanted to be sensitive to, because again, none of us are not mindful of the fact of the suffering of this family.
I noticed Sled Chief Mark Keel is here. Would you like to address the court on any matters, Chief?
Yes, sir. Just to say that, again, we're proud of our agents, the work they've done, and proud of the partnership that we've had with the Attorney General's office as we've had for many years.
So I don't know why he's allowing the sheriff to speak. That just doesn't seem right to me, but it's inconsequential.
And again, we're here seeking justice to serve, and we believe it has.
Thank you. For the defense.
Your Honor, Mr. Griffin and I would have no comment. The defendant would like to address the court, though.
That's the right of allocution. The right of allocution is where, the defendant is about to be sentenced and you have the right to get up and make a statement. You don't have to, but you can. Let's listen in.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm innocent. I would never hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never hurt my son, Pawpaw.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
See, if he does, he will probably appeal, and anything he says in there, if he made an admission, that could certainly go against him on appeal. So,
Anything further?
I don't think further comment is necessary, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Murdaugh, if you will come to the court for sentencing. This has been perhaps one of the most troubling cases, not just for me as a judge, for the state, for the defense team, but for all of the citizens in this community, all the citizens in this state, and as we've seen based on the media coverage throughout the nation, you have a wife who's been killed, murdered, a son savagely murdered.
So the judge has a role as well, and the judge is speaking for the community basically, and this judge has seen a lot of different kinds of cases over his long career, and this is where you impart wisdom on society as a judge.
A person from a respected family who has controlled justice in this community for over a century, a person whose grandfather's portrait hang at the back of the courthouse that I had to have ordered removed in order to ensure that a fair trial was had by both.
So it can't be understated the significance of this family in the community. You've got a law firm that goes back 4 generations, 100 years, and so the grandfather is somebody that was a pillar of the legal community. I'm not sure exactly if he was a judge or what, but his portrait was hanging in the courthouse. So in an effort to be fair to everybody, because it would seem odd to have that continue, so the judge had it ordered taken down, just because you can't have that unfairness, or even the perception of unfairness.
And I've sat through the trial. Not only have I sat through the trial, but also as the presiding judge of the state grand jury, sat through and participated in the issuance of search warrants of various sorts, bond hearings, and have had to consider many things. And we have this case, and I'm also assigned to preside over 99 others, at least.
99 others. Those are all the financial crimes. And I suspect that those will resolve because he's already admitted to all that conduct when he was on the stand. So that essentially is going to be a no-brainer.
9 other cases. Though testimony has come up regarding many of those other cases, I will not make any comment with regard to any other pending matter, as I have been assigned those cases as well. It's also particularly troubling, Mr. Murdaugh, because as a member of the legal community and a well-known member of the legal community, you've practiced law before me, and we've seen each other at various occasions.
Imagine that. Imagine you come from such white bread, you know, a long-standing, well-respected law firm, that you were in front of the judge as a litigant, as a somebody who was doing justice. He was also a part-time prosecutor. So imagine having those and fucking it all up and just trashing your family's name just with everything that you've done. I mean, it isn't just killing your wife and son. It's that plus all the other scores of people that you screwed over. And now you go before this judge, and it's really an uncomfortable spot, probably even for the judge, to be honest with you.
Years.
And in some spots, they would probably send it to another county. I'm surprised they didn't.
And it was especially heartbreaking for me to see you go in the media from being a grieving father who lost a wife and a son to being the person indicted and convicted of killing them. And you've engaged in such duplicitous conduct here in the courtroom.
And to what end? To what end is that? You know, that duplicitous conduct. That's what he's talking about. He had all the ticket. I mean, he had life by the ass. And for whatever reason, it wasn't enough. And that was a line that the prosecution used throughout the trial, that it just wasn't enough.
Here on the witness stand, and as established by the testimony throughout the time leading from the time of the indictment and prior to the indictment throughout the trial to this moment in time. Certainly, you have no obligation to say anything other than saying not guilty. And obviously, as appeals are probably expected or absolutely expected, I would not expect a confession of any kind. In fact, as I've presided over murder cases over the past 22 years, I have yet to find a defendant who could go there, who could go back to that moment in time when they decided to pull the trigger or to otherwise murder someone. I have not been able to get anyone, any defendant, even those who have confessed to being guilty, to go back and explain to me what happened at that moment in time when they opted to pull the trigger, when they opted to commit the most heinous crimes known to man. In this case, qualifies under our death penalty statute based on the statutory aggravating circumstances of two or more people being murdered.
So the fact that they didn't seek the death penalty is, I think, a reflection of the fact that they might not think they could get it because of the prominence of the family. But that was early on. I bet you now, if they could look back, they might think differently.
By the defendant by one act or pursuant to one scheme or course of conduct. I don't question at all the decision of the state not to pursue the death penalty. But as I sit here in this courtroom and look around the many portraits of judges and other court officials and reflect on the fact that over the past century, your family, including you, have been prosecuting people here in this courtroom, and many have received the death penalty, probably for lesser conduct.
Doesn't sound like he's actually going to be lenient here now, does? And when you think about that statement that the judge just made about, your family has prosecuted people and given them the death penalty for less conduct. I mean, that puts things into perspective, don't you think? I mean, here he has this public trust. He's got a trust with his clients, he's got a trust with the court, and he abused it all. Trust with his family, and he abused it all.
Remind me of the expression you gave on the witness stand. Was it tangled?
What a tangled web we weave.
Oh, what tangled web we weave. What did you mean by that?
And then when I lied, I continued to lie.
That was the dumbest thing he could have ever said on the stand.
And the question is, when will it end? When will it end? And it's ended already for the jury because they've concluded that you continued to lie and lied throughout your testimony. And perhaps with all the throng of people here, they, for the most part, all believe, or 80, 90%, 99% believe that you continue to lie now when your statement of denial to the court. Perhaps you believe that it does not matter, that there's nothing that can mitigate a sentence given the crimes that were committed.
And what that means is, sometimes, let's say you catch your wife in bed with another man and you blow the guy away. That's heat of passion. That's a mitigating factor. But let's say you're just pissed off at your wife because she's not giving you sex and you blow her away. There's no mitigation there. You see the difference? And that's kind of what the judge is talking about. I know those are kind of extreme examples, but mitigation is something where, yeah, you're guilty of the crime, but I'll give you an example. My client was being attacked at a mall, and they were beating the crap out of him, and he shoots into the crowd. It doesn't hit anybody, but he shoots. And when he shoots, the other people weren't armed, so it's technically probably not perfect self-defense. But there's mitigation because he wasn't the aggressor. He's being attacked. You don't have anything like that here.
You know, a notice of alibi was filed in this case by counsel in November, and we conducted a hearing, pretrial hearing, in which you claimed to have been someplace else at the.
So one of the things when you have to notice alibi, you have to notice your defenses. So if it's self-defense, you have to file a notice of self-defense. And in the case of alibi, you not only have to notice it, you have to put on some evidence to show the judge that we're serious about this. I was really in Detroit when this happened. Listen to what he says about this, because this just shows the duplicitous nature of Alec Murdaugh.
Time the crime was committed. Then, after all of the witnesses placed you at the scene of the crime, at the last minute, or last minutes or days, you switch courses and admitted to being there.
That is probably the single fact that is the most damning fact in this whole case. And it's uncontroverted. There's no argument about it.
And then that necessitated more lies and continued to lie. And I said, where will it end? It's already ended for many who have heard you and concluded that it'll never.
Have you ever been around somebody that everything out of their mouth is bullshit? I mean, just everything is just BS, and you know, and you like them. You know, you like them because they're a nice person, or you've just known them forever, or they're a good friend. But everything out of their mouth is just absolute BS. At some point, you're done. At some point, you just have to be done listening to their bullshit and listening to the lies. And I think that's the point at which the judge is talking about, something like that.
But within your own soul, you have to deal with that. And I know you have to see Paul and Maggie during the night times when you're attempting to go to sleep. I'm sure they come and visit you. I'm sure.
Look at this deputy is just nodding throughout this whole proceeding, and that is seeing those Maggie and Paul in his sleep. That's a powerful image.
And every night.
I'm sure. And they will continue to do so. And reflect on the last time they looked you in the eyes, as you looked the jury in the eyes. I don't know person who's always been such a gregarious, friendly person, and cause your life to be tangled in such a weave web, such a situation that yours have spun into.
Yeah, and that's a good point. How did you get into this web? And it doesn't just boom go there. It just starts with a little bit, you know. Oh, I'm going to shave a little more costs off of this particular file. I'm going to I'm going to take some pain meds, you know, just because they're there. And all of a sudden, that more than one. And then you get this addictive personality. And all of a sudden, that's told from not just one, but 10 clients. Now you all of a sudden have to pay this back, and you have to do this. So you have to lie to this person, this person, this person. You got to lie to your wife. You got to lie to your son. Pretty soon, this snowballs out of control.
You can convince yourself about it, but obviously you have the inability to convince anyone else about that. So if you made any such arguments as a lawyer, you would lose every case like that. Cases you will never have an opportunity to argue anymore, except perhaps your own as you sit in the Department of Corrections. Anything further? Mr. Murdaugh, I sentence you to the State Department of Corrections on each of the murder indictments in the murder of your wife, Maggie Murdaugh, I sentence you for the term of the rest of your natural life for the murder of Paul Murdaugh, whom you probably love so much. I sentence you to prison for murdering him for the rest of your natural life. Those sentences will run consecutive.
So that means that one runs right after the other. In other words, the other one doesn't start running until the other one's completed. I mean, if he's ever eligible for parole on one, he wouldn't be eligible for parole on the other until the other one, so the net effect of it is that he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison without parole.
Under the statute involving possession of a weapon during a violent crime, there is no sentence where a life sentence is imposed on other indictments.
And basically what that means is the weapons charges are really subsumed by the other offenses. They're a part and parcel of the same act or occurrence, so they can't really sentence on those counts.
That is the sentence of the court, and you are remanded to the State Department of Corrections. And officers may carry forth on the imposition.
So this is our reaction to the verdict and to the sentencing of Alex Murdaugh. And again, I'm not the least bit surprised. I've gotten a lot of comments, and I've told people early on that I thought he was toast. And the worst thing he could have done is testify for himself. That's the absolute worst thing he could have done. I liked one of the defense lawyers, was kind of lukewarm on the other one, especially when he did the cross-exam of the law partner. I just didn't think that helped their cause at all. So I'm Bruce Rivers. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, and sign up for Patreon. And we'll see you next time on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. 23-hour lockdown, please, is at my God.